Hi, folks. Welcome to the Bay College Veteran Speak podcast for fall semester 2024. My name is June Cleese, and I am the advisor of the Bay College branch of the Civics Corps. And we're going to be chatting with the students about the project that they did this semester, which is Veteran Speak, where they put on an intergenerational dialogue with a panel of veterans of many different ages, as you'll hear a little bit about in their discussions, and guest speakers, all that jazz. The students worked all semester to put on this event. It was broadcast on Veterans Day itself this year. And we had a very successful event. The students worked really hard all semester long to make this possible and to bring this to life for the veterans and our community at large. They build skill sets together as they work. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But before we get into the questions that the students will discuss in this podcast, I'd like to introduce my dear colleagues and friends, Matt Bugatti and Alice Mayer. If you'd wave hello for everybody. Dr. Alice Mayer is the founder of Changing Our Consciousness and the Waging Dialogue Project, and Matt is the executive director of Waging Dialogue. And so we work very closely, get to know the students. In fact, the work that we do, even as a club, is intergenerational in nature of itself, because the students, although we have a sort of a plan of attack each semester, we do this, the students bring their own ideas and help us evolve what it is we're doing from year to year. So folks, are you ready? All right. So Alice, would you please be willing to read the first question for the students?
Sure. Content-wise, what did you learn from the panelists' histories and or their intergenerational interactions? Please consider what stood out to you, what you found emotionally meaningful, or what you were surprised by.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. One of the most surprising things for me was learning about how the Merchant Marine had the highest casualties rate in World War II, but then did not receive veteran recognition until a lot later. I also thought that Terry's experience as the only woman in her unit during her time in Air Force service was pretty incredible as well.
Jumping off here, I want to mention also more of what Mr. Balabanow, the Merchant Marine veteran, said, and just the overall role of the Merchant Marine and just the wide variety of things they did that most people don't recognize. And that's not just from World War II, but Mr. Balabanow's stories actually made me want to do a bit more research on my own end. And since World War II, they've played just an instrumental role in every single conflict, and it's just something that's overlooked.
I would like to think about the branches, because you often hear people and veterans say, "Oh, I always wanted to do this branch. I always wanted to be a part of that branch." But since hearing this podcast, Mr. Balabanow mentioned how he just wanted to get in wherever he could. He went to the Merchant Marines because nobody else would take him. And another one of our speakers, I believe, I forget his name, I believe it was Jim, mentioned serving several years in several different services. And it's very interesting to me. And so I went home and asked my dad about his experience in the Air Force. And it turns out initially he was going to be in the Marines. And just funny happenstance, while he was on base for training or just landing, he happened to look at everything that was available and recruiters, and he changed his mind. And it the history of the world has been changed by just a few different people choosing different branches. It's very interesting.
I think it was also important too how even after the World War II, Mr. Balabano continued to serve in the Merchant Marine, and a lot of our panelists served for multiple years in wars and out of wars because they valued their service so much, and it was so important to them, the changes that they had made and how it just really was a big value in their lives.
I agree with Sam on that note. I think that after this, it kind of just brought me closer to the fact that what their jobs that they do, how important they are for us, and how important it is to understand and to piggyback off of what Travis said earlier about Mr. Blabenow and how he went into the Merchant Marines and then um, nobody would take him. I think that is also important in their story as well. Something that people can relate to.
Yeah, I like how Mr. Blabenow didn't give up. He just kept like, oh, they said no, I'm gonna continue on. I'm gonna try and get into this branch and that branch, and oh, they're not gonna take me, I'll join the Merchant Marines instead. I also like Tony's story about picking up trash, like that one guy would do it every morning and then soon the whole uh group was doing it with him.
One of the like very inspirational things I thought was I believe it was Hamp that was talking about there's two times when you join the military is when you first join and when you actually join. I thought that was I don't know, it's like and they all kind of agreed with it just because of there is you join and then you go into something and then you are really doing it. And that's just a big difference and they all agreed and they all went and they all have their different experiences in different branches.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a wealth of experience that our panelists had. And it really seems like the histories that they shared, from their different generational perspectives, really gave you insight and different ways of looking at things. Does anybody else want to add anything else to this question? If not, we can move on to the next one. Matt. Nope, we can't hear you, Matt.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. So thinking back on the event, what other questions would you have asked of our panelists if time had allowed? What other things would you have liked to have known, or were there other interactions you'd like to have seen?
To start us off here, I would say I want to know more how their experiences in the military has benefited their civil lives after their service. We didn't touch on that very much, and I think we talked more about how it's affected them, but not the actual just straight up benefits, you know. Lots of those guys served in roles that were like actually beneficial to their civilian lives in terms of like skills they've gained and all that. And it's something that we didn't really touch on. I want to know more about how those skills they picked up in the military actually benefited their civilian lives.
To piggyback off of that, would have liked to know better about um what happened when they got home and how were their lives changed from then on, as kind of a okay, what next? Do I go to college or do I continue my career in the military? And furthermore, I also would have liked to have known maybe if they would have um, picked another branch as well, or yeah, pretty much sums it up, I guess.
I would have liked to know what their families' reactions were when they said, hey, I'm going into the military or I'm going into this branch, and also how they had conversations with their family while they were serving and how that changed through the years because Mr. Blabenow wouldn't have a cell phone or FaceTime like we do now. So it would change from each person depending on their generation.
Kind of to come off of that, I would say, what is like your little like thing you would get from home that just made your day? Because my mom used to send my dad Butterfingers because that's his favorite candy. And he would stash them away so that his like buddies wouldn't find them, and like it was his special thing. Like, what was your Butterfinger? What was your note with your wife's lipstick on it? What was your husband's handwriting on, the card sent home? Like, I want to know what you still have in a shoebox under your bed.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have liked to have heard more of their just fun stories from their time in service. A lot of them served for so many years and are still serving. And I know we did touch on it in one question, asking them what boosted morale or what was one of their great memories. I probably could have sat and listened to a whole event just on everyone's different funny memories or something that stuck with them still throughout the years. That's what I would have liked to hear more.
I have, oh,
Go ahead, Nick.
okay. So one thing, like we listened to their stories, I would like to know if they heard stories from people that were already in the military for a long time. Like if they learn stories as we're learning theirs and that experience of it.
That's a neat take on it, Nick. Yeah.
For me, it was what did they think was the most misunderstood or overlooked aspect of their branch contribution to military history? You know, because we talk about all the things that their branch has, accomplished and stuff, but we don't always talk about the things that are not seen, or, we get labeled as something, but that's not necessarily what we truly are. So.
Mhm. Yeah, and that kind of circles back with what y'all were saying about the understanding, although not a military branch, but the role of the Merchant Marine as well. That's not really seen, not by the public as or understood by the public as even being there. So yeah, for sure. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to that question? Any other thoughts? Thought you raised some excellent points. All right, so let's segue a little bit away from, I mean, we still can bring up the event, but not so much about the actual content and all, but thinking more broadly. I guess I want to start with this intergenerational work that you're doing, right? It's a different kind of thing. Not a lot of college students get to do this, and it's really neat how much you embrace this process, and we're so enthusiastic, right, about getting to hear the stories from different generations. So I guess this one is sort of twofold, or at least you can kind of come at it from two different angles. If more intergenerational dialogue were to happen in the United States, what do you think would be the social benefits of such? And actually, I think I'm just going to start with that, and then I'll keep chunking away at this question. What do you think might be the benefits if more intergenerational dialogue were to happen?
I think as time comes on, we lose different things from the past. You know, my grandmother did sewing and cooking and stuff, but my mother didn't learn that. And so therefore I haven't learned that, even though now I have an interest to learn that. And so I am trying to learn that, but I'm not looking for somebody my age. I'm looking for somebody who's a baby boomer, somebody that, that's what they did. And so I think that it continue on different skills that you would otherwise lose if you didn't have that connection. Plus, from their age, they get to share something that they have a passion for or have enjoyed doing. And so therefore they feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
I think just being able to understand each other more would be like a benefit. Like, because like you see this with like different generations music, like the different music from different generations, and they're like, no, mine is better. No, mine's better. Yours sucks. Well, why do you specifically like that music? What's appealing to you about that music? And just more knowledge too. Like, just you learn more from older people, from people who have more life experience than you do.
I think it was just forming these new almost relationships is maybe a better word, because I would call Mr. Balabanow and interview him up into this event, and I was excited to actually be like, okay, I'll call you Wednesday, or okay, I'll call you Thursday. Or if I missed a time, he would call me right on the dot and be like, you forgot. And then we would chit chat about his time in service, and he would ask me some questions about like how I was doing. And it was very comforting and exciting and fun just to meet somebody new. And like I would wake up and be like, okay, I have to call Mr. Blabenow today at 11 o'clock. And I would be looking forward to it. And it was really nice.
That's
Branching
awesome.
off Samantha there, I want to add on just in general the people skills you get from talking to someone in a different generation are really important. And just it's some people find it hard to talk to people who aren't the same age as them, and having your intergenerational dialogue makes it just easier to talk to people in general because you know as young adults we are a minority right now, and being able to talk to people who maybe the same age as our like employers or faculty or anyone who we have to have a good relationship with, the being able to talk to them is really important.
I agree with Travis as well. I think if anything, I have learned over the years from having a mother who was always working in nursing homes as a nurse and hanging out with them and doing their hair, and a lot of the elderly people that seem, those spitfires who they just come off as mean, and you just think that they don't have any compassion, or they can't be nice. Once you actually sit down and talk to those people and start to kind of chip away at them, you learn so much more, and they actually become the sweetest people ever. And I just love that so much. That's probably my most favorite thing about intergenerational dialogue, and this only just promotes it for me, and it's awesome. I love the work.
That's awesome to hear, Alyssa.
Coming off of what Alyssa said, I also grew up with a mom who was a nurse who had a bunch of older friends. Most of my mom's friends she hung out with were all older than her. She didn't work at a nursing home, but she volunteered at a, clinic for diabetics and stuff. And so she would draw their blood and such. And so come the time I was homeschooled, I would spend my time doing homework and hanging out with older people. And just those experiences, I now have been told as a young adult that I sound much older than I am, that I use language that sounds much older. Like my appearance may not say older than 18, but my attitudes might, because I spent so much time with my parents, a nurse and a veteran, and their friends who are even older than them, just in the home. And I didn't go to a public high school. All that intergenerational dialogue has produced, I feel, a more well-rounded human out of me. And it's kept me from already making mistakes because just I seek out older friends. I seek out that knowledge and that experience because I like to get things right on the first try. And the best way to get things right on the first try is learn every way not to do it. And I don't know, I seem to like gravitate towards older people. Like sometimes at like gay college events, I'll hang out with the teachers because uh, they went to college once too, and they always have studying tips for me or don't do this before exams type of thing.
And we're teachers when we'll definitely share and talk your ears off. Other thoughts?
One benefit, like, or a few benefits, I guess, of it would be is just you learn all the experiences. Yeah, that is a very good aspect, but it makes it easier. The more you do it, makes it easier for that. So you can be more outgoing. You can, it makes it easier to talk to random people. It makes it easier to talk to anyone, really.
Mhm.
It just, that's a good thing. And then you learn from people, and then you can keep doing it and get better. And, you could be someone that doesn't want to talk to anyone, but eventually, if you do it so much, you could probably be a public speaker if you put your mind to it, just from that.
Interesting, yeah. Any other thoughts on that segment of the question? I have a follow-up. Okay, so let me ask you this, and if it sort of segues naturally from some of the points that we've already made, that's fine. So you're talking with some of your peers one night, and they, hey, you're doing this intergenerational stuff. and they say something like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could talk to somebody, that's that much older or that kind of thing, especially if I didn't know them. What kind of advice would you give to your peers? Somebody basically around your age. I mean, you already sort of cited some of the benefits, but what would you give them advice about maybe going about doing it? Obviously, they need to come to Veterans Speak next year and watch our YouTube programming on that. But certainly we would recommend that. But just in everyday life, well, how would you advise them about getting more comfortable talking to people of different generations?
To jump right in, I would tell them to just start out just not saying much, listen, and go in with an open eye or open mind. And then what I usually do if I'm feeling really nervous before approaching somebody or talking to somebody, I'll just count in my head, okay, on the count of 3, I'm just gonna walk up to them and start talking. And that it's seriously, you wouldn't think it would help, but it really does.
That's interesting. That's a super cool technique.
Going with Alyssa here, I think overall just giving the person more time to talk than you would give to anyone else when asking the question, letting them tell their full story and not cutting them off at any point saying, you talked for too long, nothing like that. Let them tell the full story, no matter how long it takes, because there's details they'll give you if you just let them keep talking. They'll remember as they speak and all that, and it's just a better way to communicate.
I know personally I start off really small and simple, and it's more of a casual like hello, and then I grow and I get more comfortable. But in my experience, it's having curiosity about their lives. If you're not curious, then they think that you're just doing it just to do it out of sympathy or pity or whatever. But also to be respectful. A lot of the people in the older generations want to be heard with hello, sir, hello, ma'am. They want that. When you just say, yo, what's up? It does not come across the same way. So, but
Right.
also active listening, engaging, like you may be listening, but unless you're like clearly showing that you're actively listening, they don't always catch that you are, and so then they don't want to continue.
Mhm, mhm,
Coming off of what Raina said about yes sir, yes ma'am, every time I, use those words and stuff, I get a response that's a surprise from the older generation. And it's because so many people exclude politeness to our older generation now. I'm not saying take abuse from the older generation. What I'm saying is they've lived and paved the way for you, and it's only nice to pay the respect back. So we should not continue to see surprise in older generations when they hear yes ma'am, no ma'am, it's disappointing to hear that. But back to the point of what would you recommend, what would you say to get your peers talking intergenerationally. I would say my biggest fear is conflicting political opinions, which for me has not been the biggest issue, but for other people, that's what I hear is, oh, I don't want to talk to them. They think this. So I don't want to talk to them. They think that. And it's important to think about the context of when they were born and, how they were raised, what they were brought up in, and to be gentle with that, just as you would assume the same respect and just avoiding those topics. Then you do not need to cut loose intergenerational ties just because you're afraid of a few topics. That is really breaking important conversations and conversations you should be hearing and you need for your life. Just because you're afraid to talk about politics, just steer away from it. There's so much you could be learning if you just learn how to avoid certain topics and take and reap what is most important from that conversation.
Yeah, that's a really powerful point there. And if you are comfortable going into politics, it's the way you do it, right? It's how you finesse into that. That's a really empowering point there to think about. Don't let those kinds of perceptions stop you from having the conversations that really can enrich your life and the life of the person that you're speaking with, for sure. Does anybody else have any thoughts to round this out?
I personally would tell them just go for it. Just jump right into it. And then like also avoid like big political controversial topics, but like get comfortable with them first and then listen to them. And then maybe as you get more comfortable, then you can do more controversial topics that otherwise you might not be comfortable doing right away, not knowing who this person is. Because if you do that, I know from experience that people get mad and people get upset, and you do not want that. You want to just listen to them and listen to the whole thing, what they have to say, what they believe, why they believe it, and just jump in.
Yeah.
So I know that Abigail and Chloe hit on the controversial topics, and I think the easiest way to avoid that is to think about if you were going to talk to either your grandparents or your great grandparents, what type of conversation would you have with them? You know, you're not going to go into that muddle mess. You're going to talk about their memories of, cooking or this or that. And so I would look at it as like you're talking to your grandparents or your great grandparents, and just hear what they have to say.
I think part of it though is our event wasn't just older people. We had a lot of different age groups discussing their experiences. And I know the gentleman I talked to was older, but we each had our own person that we had to reach out to. And it is going to be a little intimidating, even if you are super outgoing, to talk to someone that you don't know and ask them questions. And a lot of people think that when you're starting off with having these really important conversations, that it's going to be a little bit maybe condescending or you're going to find something you disagree on. And that's kind of the wrong mindset to go in with. You should be going in with it's okay to just talk. And a lot of times, even from my grandparents, I've heard them say, we just want someone to talk to us. And then we want to talk to you. They like telling their stories. And a lot of times, they also really like hearing what you have to say and what you're doing with your life. And it doesn't have to be this huge debate about what topics not to go into. A lot of time, they just like to talk. And that was something that helped me with Mr. Balabano is, I mean, I didn't assume we'd get into anything political. I knew that by picking up the phone, it would either, well, once I got to know him, it would either be an immediate question or it would be just, well, how's your day going? And then we'd start off on how our day was going, what we had done. And then we'd get into, okay, let's start off with some questions. What did you do about your time in the service? Do you have any questions about the Zoom link? And just starting off by just talking to each other would really help break that like ice barrier or even those thoughts that something's going to be a disagreement or needed to be avoided.
Alice, it looked like you had something you wanted to share.
Yeah, I just from the opposite direction, as I'm, a boomer, and I've spent a lot of time talking to people older and younger as a psychiatrist, but it's with a particular frame of reference, like what's wrong with you? Let me help fix you, write a prescription, or it has been really eye-opening for me because it's just people who are different, people who come from a different center, a different time. And just listening to you talk has been a real new experience for me. And it's hard for me to have new experiences when you've been a psychiatrist for 50 years. But I appreciate it. And I wish we could learn to do that more often, just bridge divides. For some reason, it's uncomfortable. It's more uncomfortable to talk to someone who's, 50 years younger than you are, or 20 years younger than you are, than it is to talk to someone of one of your peers. I'm not sure why that is, but it's really worth thinking about because we can learn so much from these conversations.
Absolutely. And sadly, I believe, and this is just my thought process here, but in the years that I've been on this planet, and I'm Gen X, So we have, and then Matt is a millennial, so we do have a nice intergenerational mix in our own work as it is. I do think somewhat the media plays into creating stereotypes about the attitudes of different generations. All boomers are this, or all Gen Zs are that. And I think for people who are a little more shy or embarrassed to engage, that's the kind of stuff that unfortunately seeps into the brain and takes away the common humanity that we all have, no matter, the when and wheres of us, right? And those are the starting points. Those are the starting points, not these artificial manufactured differences that, we know they exist in all forms, right? It's not just age, it's other kinds of beliefs and all that, are these manufactured divisions that come from a place of fear, right? And if we allow ourselves to go down that rabbit hole, then it becomes a barrier when we really have direct human, interactions that become part of our job or just part of our enjoyment in life, right? So thank you so much for those thoughts. I want to segue into the last question for our podcast, and it is a little multifaceted in the sense that it's about, your experience this semester and the work that you put in. You came up with the panelists. We had help from our partner organizations, but we worked through developing the panel. We worked through what the event was going to look like. We added a new feature this year with trivia, which was really fun and definitely was received a lot of positive feedback. So when you think about the whole experience and up to and including what we're doing with this podcast, what kinds of benefits did you gain from participating? What kind of skills did you bring to the table? What kind of skills did you acquire? What challenges, internal challenges did you face that you had maybe you were fearful of public speaking and, now you feel like you've moved that dial a little bit. You're not as wary of the experience. And also, what would you do or how do you look at this experience in relationship to encouraging others perhaps to participate in the Civics Corps? Would you recommend it, in other words, to others as well? So it's a kind of a multifaceted question, but I want to just sort of lay that out and see what you think.
Well, this is my second year doing this veterans event. And I really like how it is something that gets you a little organized. I enjoy the feedback that we get from our panelists and from the audience from last year that we could make this year's event even better. And one of my favorite parts is not only just being introduced to these people and hearing their stories, but I really like how afterwards we all come together and think about it and what impacted us the most. We just sit and remember the event and answer questions, or hey, we could have done this, or just what we enjoyed the most. And I think we really we afterwards we really kind of dig into those thoughts and our event by the article that we usually write or just discussing it, and then even preparing for this podcast. So it's not something that's just okay, we put on this event, now we can wait till next year. I think we really want it to be a very big influence on our lives and something that we can use daily. And I know just for me, by the time I had handed a flyer to my mom to hang up at the deli she works at, she goes, okay, I've been waiting for this to come back. I was wondering when you were going to do it. So like she's even ready for it too, to watch and to listen. And my boss was a panelist last year, and he had come up to me, I think a week before the event, and goes, do you need me to be a panelist? I forgot to ask you, but I'm totally willing to do this again. And I was like, oh, well, we have some this year, but we'll keep you in mind. And it's something that everybody looks forward to and actually still thinks about year round.
That's wonderful to hear, Sam. That's awesome. And I do appreciate you kind of adding, how do you all see this as an experience, that you've had, but how it affects your life, and how do you think this might cross-pollinate into your careers as well, as something I could add to that question. So let's continue.
So-
This is also my second year, and I personally liked doing the research for questions, for the trivia questions on the Merchant Marine, because I found stuff that I never knew before, even though this is my second year, and I unlike some of the other panelists, they might not have known about the Merchant Marine before, but I did since last year. And so just learning about the Merchant Marine more, and also not a big public speaker at all whatsoever, like terrified me, had a breakdown one time. So, and this year I felt comfortable enough to be like, hey, you know what? I'll open it. I'll start the whole thing. And I was on the radio twice. And also being able to publish an article that we got to do last year and this year, which is kind of cool, and not everyone can say that they got to publish an article.
Thanks, Chloe. Anybody else?
So, kind of branching off what Chloe said here, I was the one who hosted the trivia, the newest portion of the event this year,
Yep.
and getting that experience, having that pretty large section where I was really the only speaker for a lot of it was like it was a scary prospect at first when I was volunteer to do it. Um, but once I really got into it, I found it really easy. And I think just that event really improved my ability to speak in public. And I found that since then, I've been more like able to reach out to people and talk more. And also branching off the other part of this question here, I'm in the criminal justice program and plan to go into law enforcement. And in that job, you have just a lot of public interaction. It's every day, all day. You're speaking to people. You gotta be good with people. They might not like you, they might like you. You never know. And just that experience of being able to talk to people who I didn't know until that event really just helped, and it's going to be beneficial to my career path.
Thank you, Travis.
Pulling off of what Travis said, I'm also going into law enforcement. And if anything, obviously, when you first enter this job, they expect you to be young and physically fit. And so all your superiors are quite a bit older than you. And an important thing is to learn how to be respectful of your superiors, because they 90% of the time they're going to know what's best. They have been in this field for so much longer than you. You need to gain wisdom from them. You need to respect them. You need to talk to them like you respect them. And I think it is just like a really good like practice run to just continually be conversating with people who are my superiors in a different way, when those who will be in charge of me years from now will also be around their age and have maybe similar experiences. It's important to be respectful. And branching off of the public speaking thing, I've never really had a problem with that because I like to yap. But I'd say that I was shyer at college at first, like coming from being homeschooled and stuff. And Civics Corps was, one of my first like families at college. Like it made a family for me. It made people I could talk to in the halls, like Sam and Alyssa. And it was nice to feel like I belonged at school, and this was a great place to start.
Well, that's wonderful, Abby, and we're happy you're part of the Civics Corps family. Anybody else have thoughts? Alyssa.
I'd like to jump in. Like I said earlier in the podcast, I was raised by a nurse who worked in nursing homes. So naturally, I'm all about this stuff. It's my favorite, and all the history you can gain even from the older generations are very valuable as a citizen. And also, I think that it to steal what Alice said, is that it really opened up my eyes to this kind of thing, and it really sparked an obsession. And I don't think you guys are ever going to get rid of me, to be honest. That being said, it also opened up a new world of public speaking, because that's a skill that I've always had, but I kind of lost it because of past experiences for a couple of years. So I was really nervous coming into this, like, oh my gosh, am I gonna be able to do this, or am I gonna be able to feel comfortable and kind of get into a groove? And I did. And I'd love to do this kind of thing again elsewhere, and join back next year as well to kind of put what I've learned and gained into it as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
A lot of us have talked about public speaking and the fear of that and the challenge that we've had to overcome with that. And I know that I also have that fear since I tend to slaughter my words or speak too fast. But I think a even more important skill that was learned is communication on all levels, you know, working as a team versus contacting the panelists versus, you know, talking with each other at the meetings. You know, those are all really important, no matter what field you're going into, because you're gonna have to talk to somebody.
And you're a business major, Anna.
Yes, I am. So
So
it was
that's
a really helpful experience, you know, because I haven't had to do that a lot, and so it's definitely something I needed to learn. So I really appreciate that opportunity.
awesome. And we have our criminal justice majors, our history majors, our education majors in this group. So we have a nice mix of different majors. So it's wonderful. Nick, did you want to go?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, kind of based off Raina too. It's just the doing it, the whole creating and all of us working together, and just the experience of doing it all together, really, to make something that went so well and that we all learned from something and all had a good experience. Just the fact of, creating it is really what I thought the best experience was.
Yeah, and we did use a lot of creative juices and work through different problem solving kind of dynamics and made choices through things. And yeah, and I thought it was just a lot of fun this semester, and I appreciate you all. Did anybody else want to add any last minute thoughts on that question in terms of?
I just want to say you are not getting rid of me either.
There we go. Well, that's one of the things that we've tried to design for our students in the Civics Corps is an experience that develops out their pre-professional skills and creates community as well for their college experience. But then we have offered up the option of being a mentor student when our students leave Bay College, so they can remain part of the Civics Corps as a mentor student. And we've also generated pathways to internships that deal with this kind of work in different facets. And we had one last year, this past semester, I should say. Hunter Anderson worked with us, and I'd like to give a nod to Hunter as both our mentor member as well as the intern for Waging Dialogue and helping out on Matt's end of things. I'd like to I guess I'd like to just sort of ask Matt and Alice if they have anything they'd like to share before I do my closing.
I guess the one other thing that I was thinking about throughout this whole project is a difference in our generations. Everything I learned in education was solo. You worked alone. You got an A or a B or a C because of the work you did alone. These days, so much is group work. And I've been really sort of moved and excited by being sort of invited into this project where everybody worked together to produce something. And your generation will be doing more of that in the jobs that you're at, just because of the time dimension. 50-year difference. The jobs are different, and you're doing bigger projects. You're designing bigger things together, and everybody has a piece of a puzzle, and so that's been an education for me.
Nice.
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Having some audio issues. The one thing I would say is that I appreciate everyone who's time to say that they want to continue working with us and participating in this club. And my objective is to make opportunities consistently available so that you can be You know, you can be a club member, and then you can be a mentor member, then you will have an internship. So we'll always have something else you can do.
That's right. That's right. We're hoping this experience of the Civics Corps will continue on. I hope it'll live long past me. So for those going into teaching, you might have the banner to take up here for sure. Well, I want to thank you all. It was a great discussion, and I really appreciated working with you this semester and going into the future as well. I know we are not done yet. We have a lot more to come. So I realized I kind of skipped over my intros of the students. So I just want to acknowledge Abigail Rich, if you'd wave at Abigail, Chloe Pokovich, Nick Lamarche, Sam Combs, Alyssa O'Driscoll, Travis Mills, and Raina Silverstein as our wonderful Civics Corps students this semester. And I already mentioned our mentor, student Hunter Anderson. So each fall, as we discussed here, the students start from scratch every semester, building up through the interactive process that will culminate in Veteran Speak each fall. And as they discussed, it's an intergenerational dialogue experience that honors our country's veterans and is a service to our community. The work bridges those generations, creating opportunities for learning, understanding, and developing respect while fostering meaningful connections. And you heard about those meaningful connections that the students forged tonight. The students all collaborated with 3 organizations that all have a national presence. The American Legion Department of Michigan, in particular, was our local connection. We also partnered with American Merchant Marine Veterans and Veterans for All Voters, as well as, of course, our parent organization, Waging Dialogue under Changing Our Consciousness. Together, they forged these connections that highlighted the invaluable experiences that were shared in the Veteran Speak. And through those experiences, as the students attested, they hone vital career skills, such as critical thinking, public speaking, irony, public speaking, teamwork, organization and project planning, creativity, innovation, and of course, basic professionalism. They channeled these skills into designing this podcast as well, which is a meta-analysis of their journey, with the aim of inspiring others, not only hopefully to join the Civics Corps, but to have intergenerational dialogues of their own in their communities, with their families, with coworkers, you name it, because such conversations are essential for bridging divides, sharing wisdom, and building mutual understanding across age groups. And as some of the students mentioned, just that element of even sharing skills that may not be as prevalent in society that are still very, very useful. So I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to my dear colleagues and friends, Mr. Matt Bugatti and Dr. Alice Mayer, for their time, care, and just they're bringing their expertise and all their heart into this work. We couldn't do it without you, and we appreciate you so very much. As a group, we also deeply appreciate the support that was given to us by the staff, administration, and faculty of Bay College under the visionary leadership of Dr. Narita Hughes, as well as the members of the Civics Corps Advisory Board and Changing Our Consciousness. In particular, I'd like to mention Miss Melissa Amor and also Heather Kreidler, who helped come in on certain aspects of the work, from communication elements, but also some of our assessment pieces that we did. The work the students accomplished this semester is both timely and critically important. It contributes to the larger movement that's going on right now all across the United States Civic Wellness Movement, which is a growing grassroots effort by Americans committed to revitalizing the skill sets necessary for active citizenship in our democracy. This movement stands as a vital counterforce to the toxic tribalism and divisiveness that's threatening the fabric of our republic. By fostering civic dialogue, we reinforce the foundational blessings of liberty, domestic tranquility, and general welfare upon which our nation depends. Intergenerational dialogue is central to this work, serving as a bridge between the past and the present and equipping future generations with the wisdom and resilience they need to navigate complex challenges. Conversations like these not only honor the legacy of those who came before, but also inspire hope and a vision for what lies ahead. We are truly grateful that you shared your time with us today. If you feel led to learn more about our work, please visit Waging Dialogue's website. Thank you for being part of this experience. May the dialogues of our times forge a more perfect union for all generations of Americans, one that is functional, healthy, and filled with hope for ourselves and posterity. Thank you and have a great day.